Hello, everyone, and welcome to the real estate market analysis for Almaden Valley, California for December of 2008. And this presentation is sponsored by Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services and me, Robert Whitelaw. I'm the president and CEO of Whitelaw & Sons. I'm also a member of the National Association of Realtors. I'm also a licensed broker in the state of California and a certified ePro. Now let's go ahead and just jump right into the supply and demand numbers for Almaden Valley for December of 2008. Now, the first numbers we're going to look at here are the inventory numbers. Now, inventory is up 60.78%. That's an increase of 31 homes in the inventory, giving us a grand total of 82 homes currently on the market. As you can see, we're not at our peak. Back in 2001, 2002, 2003, inventory was higher. That's actually good news. A lot of other communities that have tended to resist this down market are now far above where they were when we had the high-tech stock bubble burst back in the early 2000s. So this is actually relatively good news. While obviously it's not good compared to years going back to 2004, we're actually doing better than we did at the worst stages of 2001 and 2002. So that's some good news. New listings in Almaden Valley are actually only up a very small amount. They're up by 7.14%. That's only one more home listed at this time of the year than the same time last year. So in December of 2007, we listed one fewer home in the month of December. Now, that gives us a grand total of 15 homes that were listed. So that's relatively good news, particularly when we take into consideration the number of homes that were sold in Almaden Valley, which is particularly good news. As you can see, we sold more homes than we listed. That is a trend you want to see. That's how we get control of inventory numbers. So that's actually very good. That's a very good indicator to me. As soon as we start seeing those numbers getting higher than what we're listing, that makes me optimistic. Now, sales are actually up 23.08%. That's 3 more homes sold in December of 2008 than in December of 2007. That gave us a grand total of 16 homes sold. Now, let's move on to a little bit more good news for Almaden Valley, unlike a lot of other areas. As most of you know who've listened to these types of presentations before, you know I like to look into the ratio between inventory and sold. That basically gives us an idea of two things. One, if the inventory numbers and sales numbers froze right where they are right now, how long would it take to sell all the homes in inventory? And it's also a number that tells us it gives us a general idea of the level of competition out there. In other words, for every home that sells, how many homes out there are trying to get sold? And for the month of December of 2008, that number stands at 5.125. That is a very good number. I consider that in almost the normal market range. So that's relatively good news. That basically tells us that it would take us about 5 months to sell off the total inventory we have right now if sales stayed the same as they are as they were in December of 2008. And it tells us that for about every home that sells, there's about 5 out there trying to get sold. Those are relatively good numbers. I mean, in a normal market, we usually see it down around 4, but that's close enough. I think that's actually an excellent number, and folks in Almaden Valley should be happy with that. Let's go ahead and take a look at the same supply and demand numbers now, just going back over previous months, see if we can figure out what some trends might be. Now, first, we're going to look at inventory. The good news is inventory has been steadily declining, well, really since May of 2008, which is excellent news. If we look back to last year for inventory numbers, we can see that we also saw some declines, but only after a peak in August. A peak in September. We've seen a relatively steady decline. Obviously, we were in a slightly different market in the first parts of 2008 and heading into the summer. We really saw a lot of homes accumulate. We saw that all over the county. But now we've seen it steadily declining, whereas a lot of other areas, inventory has actually been increasing. So this is actually pretty good news. Inventory is actually down 16.33% from last month, November of 2008. And that means we have 16 fewer homes in inventory in December than we did in November. And we the number of homes that were listed is down. It's down 42.31%. That's 11 fewer homes listed in December than in November. Now, that's actually fairly normal. In a normal market, you would expect to see fewer homes listed in December simply because it's the holiday season. Most folks don't want to list their home in December. You usually only list it then if you have to. or if it works out for you as a convenience. But typically this isn't a month that we see a lot of listings. So seeing it decline is normal. When we compare it to last year, we can see, yes, that was the trend last year as well. We usually see the listings number peak around August, September, and then steadily decline right on into December. And that's what we saw this year as well. So let's go ahead now and take a look at the sales numbers. Excellent numbers for sales. 60% increase in the total number of homes sold. That's 6 more homes sold in December than sold in November, which actually bucks the trend a little bit. As you can see, last year from November to December, we saw a pretty substantial decrease in sold homes. And what's going to be interesting here is this is not the trend we've seen in other parts of Santa Clara County. The reason lots of homes are selling is not because of foreclosures and short sales, which is great news. And we'll cover that towards the end of this particular presentation, where I'll talk a little bit more about foreclosures and short sales in Almaden Valley. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at home prices. Of course, that's one of the next most important things folks care about. Home prices are actually fairly stable compared to last year. We do see a decrease, but not a substantial drop. The average home price was down 2.76%. That's a $26,790 drop, giving us an average price of $944,556. Now, as for median, you'll see that is hovering right where the average is, and that's good news. I usually like to see that. I like to see the average price right where the median is. That means that if we had 101 homes or 100 homes on the market, and there were the 50th home is right there at the middle. So the 50 sold, about half the homes sold below the average price, and about half the homes sold above the average price. So that's good news. That just shows us that the median isn't indicating that the homes that are selling all tended to be at the lower end or the higher end. So I think consider that to be a healthy indicator. Now, the median price change is actually down 11.19%. That's a dollar change of $117,500, giving us a median price of $932,500. As you can see, we're not at the lowest point we've been. Again, if you look back to early 1999 all the way to 2003, we're really hovering at prices that would probably reflect, if we were to go back to earlier in the year in 2004, the prices that we're seeing now are about at that level. But, you know, Almaden never really saw this insane increase in home prices. Things have been a little bit more stable for Almaden as the market has readjusted under the current changes. So while in other areas like in Los Gatos and some other communities where home prices really skyrocketed for a while there, Almaden has been relatively mild in its increases. You can see from 2002, 2003, 2004, there was definitely a big jump between 2003 and 2004, but not as much as in some other areas. So at least for the month of December, these numbers all show a fairly solid, non-fluctuating sort of market in Almaden Valley. And I think that's good news, and I think that's worked in Almaden's favor given our current market situation. Now, the highest priced single-family residential home in Almaden Valley was on 1079 Leo Court in San Jose. That sold for $1,300,000. It was listed at $1,548,000. It was on the market for 109 days, and this was a home where the folks used relisting to relist the property. So that basically means they took it off the market for a little while and then put it back on, and did it just long enough so that it would lose its connection to some of its previous listing numbers, things like the asking price. Now, the asking price, the original listed price I give you here is what it was originally before it was relisted. So these are very realistic numbers I'm giving you here. Now, the lowest priced single-family residential home in Almaden Valley was at 985 Ivory Creek Drive. That sold for $660,000. It was listed for $669,888. And that home was on the market for 70 days. Now, the average price per square foot in December of 2008 was $425.29. That is down from last month's average of $438.57. And in general, I think that actually speaks well to the market. It's not a huge drop, but it's also keeping those prices competitive enough that sales are pretty robust in Almaden Valley, and we'll get into that information next here as far as we look at the past month's performance for home prices. Now, as you can see, a little bit of fluctuation here, but if you sort of just sit back and look at the overall number performance here, you can see pretty flat performance, believe it or not. I mean, it's trending really relatively flat with maybe a little bit of a decrease. We've seen some months up, some months down. This is normal when you've got a market with as few samples. In other words, when you've only got 10, 15, 20 homes selling in a month, sometimes you'll see a lot of fluctuation because some homes sell for an extremely high amount of money, and then other homes don't. So instead of getting a nice even spread, you'll sometimes see these numbers thrown off by one home that sells at the extreme high end. Now the average home price, again, it was $944,556. Now this change from November to December was a decrease of 20.45%. That was a dollar amount of $242,864. But we did sell a home at the extreme high end in November, so I think that kind of throws the numbers off a little bit for us. But the median changed also down 7.21%. That was a dollar change of $72,500. Now this is where understanding the median kind of comes in, and November's a great month to illustrate this. You can see how far below the median or below the average the median is in November. The reason for that is simply because it's telling us that more homes sold at the bottom end of that average number than at the top end. And that's simply reflected by the fact that the average price was skewed a little bit higher by one home that was an extremely high-end home. So that's why it's always important to look at these median numbers when you don't have as many samples to look at and survey for these. So take that into effect as you're looking at these different things. Now let's go ahead and take a look. And again, the number of homes that sold for December of 2008 was 16. My wife has just brought me a cup of coffee. That makes me very happy. Now let's look at the days to sell. We can see that in Almaden Valley, we're seeing what we would normally expect, which would be an increase in the average days to get a home sold. In fact, the days to sell increased 25. That was a 48.08% increase. Now, the lowest days on market in Almaden Valley for December of 2008 was 9. One home spent 9 days on the market before it sold. But the longest days on market for a property was 372. So that obviously has thrown this number off a little bit. The next closest was 126, so it's a pretty substantial difference. So if we were to exclude that number and sort of focus more in on the more realistic numbers, aside from that 372-day number, it would be down closer to 62 to 65 days. We had the same thing in 2006 where we had one home that had just been on the market for an extremely long period of time. So I think what you should expect to see here is, or expect as a seller, if you're someone out there who's considering selling your home, the real number isn't going to be 77 for you. I think the real number is going to be closer to 60, more in line with just a slight increase from 2007. So actually pretty good considering other markets are well over 100 days to get their properties sold. So in all, Almaden Valley is doing fairly well. I think that folks can be happy with the kind of performance they've seen in the Almaden market. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the days to sell just in past months. We'll take a look at everything going all the way back to August of 2007. You can see we've had a steady increase over these months. Again, while this kind of shows it as a steady increase, the reality is a lot of this has been skewed by one or two homes each month that's been higher. At least that was true this month. It was true last month. It wasn't quite the case in September and October. Those numbers were a little bit more realistic. But again, I would look at these and think in terms of how many homes are being sampled here. But the numbers are still good, even at this high end, given so many communities in Santa Clara County that are having to they're looking at getting their home sold in nearly 100 days. Now, the month-to-month change from November to December was an 8.45% increase in the number of days to get a home sold. That's a 6-day increase. So nothing dramatic, but still skewed by homes that were at the extreme high end. So what does this tell you? If you're a homeowner who's looking to sell and your home is priced at the extreme high end, these numbers aren't going to be really reflective for you. But if you're someone who has a property that's not at the extreme high end, it's more of a mainstream home in Almaden, I think the realistic number again for you is about 60 days. All right, now let's go ahead and take a look at the numbers I promised earlier in the show about the short sales and foreclosures. Now, unlike other communities, Almaden Valley is not seeing a majority of the homes that are selling as short sales or foreclosures. They are conventional sale homes. Now let's go ahead and take a look at these numbers because I think they're great for Almaden. Now, out of all of the homes that sold, out of all 16 homes that sold in Almaden Valley, 13 were sold conventionally, meaning they weren't foreclosures or short sales. Only one was a short sale, and 2 were foreclosures. that is exceptionally good news. We're in a time when we have communities all over Santa Clara County that are seeing 50, 60% of the homes that are getting sold being short sales or foreclosures. The average for the county was, if I'm not mistaken, right around 60%. So this is great news. It really sort of taps into the idea that Almaden Valley is a more robust market. It's been a more stable market. It hasn't seen some of the dramatic fluctuations in other numbers like price. And, you know, Almaden is a go-to location for a lot of my buyers for desirable housing. The only complaint you'll ever hear from folks usually is if you're deep in Almaden, the commute out of that area can be difficult. But it has got, if you're more at the northern end of that valley, that isn't even really a concern. And it's really it's on the short list of most folks I talk to of areas that they are interested in looking at properties. And I know it's an area I look in personally for investments. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the map. As you can see, a lot of the properties are huddled more towards the north end, at least once you get right around the Camden area. But still seeing good performance and good attention to these properties, even the ones way down towards McKean. So in general, there's nothing geographically that I'd point out that I think is working for or against sellers. I think the commute time for some folks, I know I have clients that are looking in Almaden Valley right now, and one of their concerns is commute time. So a lot of times they don't want to go deeper into Almaden Valley than, say, past the Bret Harte area or around there, or past Elwood. And that's something that most folks in Almaden understand. And if you live deeper in Almaden, you understand you need to maybe have a different kind of marketing going on to get your property sold. Only 3 properties sold that were south of Bret Harte. So that's kind of an indicator, I think, of where buyers are looking, where their heads are at. Now, I do appreciate you taking the time to listen to what I have to say on these subjects. If you'd like to listen to any of my weekly podcasts on real estate, or watch any of my other market presentations, or read any of my articles on real estate, you can find those on my website at www.soldbyrobert.com. If you prefer to get in contact with me directly via email, feel free to do that at robert@soldbyrobert.com, and I'll be happy to respond with any information I can. And if you prefer to talk to me directly on the phone, feel free to dial 408-852-0525. Or if you're someone who prefers online chatting, we can try AOL Instant Messenger, Google Talk, or Yahoo IM using the screen name The Rebel Broker. If you're someone who uses Skype, Rebel Broker is the screen name. And of course, referrals are always appreciated. Or if you or anyone you know is interested in real estate in Silicon Valley, feel free to give me a call and I'll help in any way I can. But even if you're not located in Silicon Valley, anywhere in the United States, feel free to give me a call and I'll be happy to go through the process to find the right agent for you based on your needs. Thanks again for checking in, and I look forward to talking to you all next time.